Okay, so let's get into this. For, for decades, we've understood cancer as a disease of aging.
Right.
It was this cruel thing that, catches up to us in our 60s or 70s. But the data we're looking at today shows a pretty extraordinary and, frankly, a terrifying reversal of that trend. We're seeing a huge global surge in cancer diagnoses in people under 50.
It's a profound shift, and it's not slowing down, it's accelerating.
So that's our focus.
Yes. We're focused today on what's called early onset cancer, or EOC, diagnosed before age 50. And the numbers, well, they're pretty clear.
And what are they saying?
The global incidence of EOC shot up by an alarming 79.1% between 1990 and 2019.
79%.
And that group is the only age demographic that's seen a sustained overall increase since 1995.
Wow.
So our mission for this deep dive is to get into the research, focusing on what scientists are now calling the birth cohort effect, to figure out the root causes and, what we can actually do about it.
And to guide us, we've pulled a stack of sources. We have everything from prevention guidelines from the American Cancer Society to these really hard-hitting reports from Harvard and the National Cancer Institute.
And also some specialized research that's tracing the roles of things like the microbiome and chronic inflammation.
So where do we start?
Well, when you just look at the scale of this increase, the sources immediately draw a parallel to the lung cancer crisis from the mid-20th century.
Okay, so like with tobacco.
Exactly. And think about what that comparison means. It suggests we're dealing with a widespread, potent, and probably identifiable driver.
A societal level exposure.
A societal level exposure that has changed the risk profile for entire generations, just like smoking did. And while this trend is global, the rates are definitely steepest in richer Western countries.
That comparison alone, it should really make you stop and think. It makes the urgency crystal clear.
It does.
And that brings us to this idea of the birth cohort effect. Can you break down what that actually means for someone listening?
It means your risk isn't static across time. The birth cohort effect shows that generations born after 1950, so we're talking Gen X and millennials, they face a substantially higher lifetime risk for certain cancers.
Compared to their parents or grandparents.
Right. And we're not talking about a small statistical blip here. We're talking about a huge shift in environmental or dietary or lifestyle patterns that happen during their really crucial early life stages.
And the numbers for something like colorectal cancer are just staggering. The models estimate that someone born in 1990 has over double the risk of colon cancer.
Over double.
And for rectal cancer.
It's almost quadruple the risk compared to someone born in 1950.
Quadruple. It's an immense shift. It suggests a major societal failure in controlling whatever these exposures are over the last 70 years.
So what are the cancers that are driving this?
Well, it's primarily cancers we used to see almost exclusively in older adults. Things like colorectal, breast, thyroid, kidney, pancreas, and liver cancer.
The so-called adult onset cancers. Exactly. And now they're appearing in young people, and that's what really defines this crisis.
Let's focus on colorectal cancer for a minute, because a CRC diagnosis in someone under 50 just isn't that unusual anymore.
No, it's not. But the terrifying part about it is the stage at diagnosis.
Presenting late.
Very late.
Yeah.
Over half, I think the number is 57.8%, have stage 3 or stage 4 disease when they're finally diagnosed.
And that's compounded by the fact that the disease itself can act differently in younger people, right? It can be more aggressive.
It can be biologically different, more aggressive. And while the American Cancer Society has lowered screening guidelines to age 45, which is good,
right,
the steepest rates of increase are actually in the very youngest patients.
Yeah.
People still well below that new screening age.
So we're catching the 45-year-olds? Maybe, but the problem is growing fastest in people in their 20s and 30s.
That's the problem.
Okay, so we have this huge generational risk. Researchers are starting to unify all the suspects under one banner. The exposome? What is that?
The exposome is, it's the cumulative measure of all your environmental and lifestyle exposures throughout your entire life.
So everything.
Everything. From external factors like diet, air pollution, chemicals, to internal responses like stress in your microbiome. It's a whole picture.
And for that 1990 birth cohort?
Well, they're the first generation to have been exposed to ultra-processed foods, so much sedentary time, and a massive chemical load literally from birth. And that collective burden is what's thought to be driving this cancer acceleration.
Let's start with one of the biggest modifiable pieces here, diet, and metabolic health. We all kind of know ultra-processed foods, UPFs, are bad for us.
Right.
But the sources are linking them directly to cancer precursors, and not just because they make you gain weight.
That's the critical part. One study showed that people eating the most UPFs had a 45% higher risk of developing adenomas.
The precancerous growths in the colon.
Exactly. And that link was still there, even after they adjusted for things like BMI, type 2 diabetes, and fiber intake.
So it's not just the weight gain. What are these UPFs actually doing?
That's the big question. Is it the preservatives,
Yeah.
the emulsifiers, the chemicals that disrupt the gut barrier?
It's something in the food itself.
The current hypothesis is that these compounds are disrupting the gut lining, promoting what's called dysbiosis, and triggering chronic inflammation.
We'll get to inflammation in a minute.
But you mentioned weight, and we can't ignore the metabolic side. Excess body weight is a huge risk factor. And on top of that, type 2 diabetes has soared globally.
And the age of diagnosis has dropped.
Plummeted. In the U.S., the average age of diagnosis went from 52 in the late 80s down to 46 by the year 2000. That 6-year drop perfectly mirrors the generational metabolic decline we see in the cancer data.
Okay, so if we shift from food to other toxins, the research on alcohol is getting much more firm. It's not just about heavy drinking anymore, is it?
Not at all. The evidence now suggests that alcohol at any level seems to increase the risk for a number of cancers: liver, esophageal, colorectal, breast, stomach.
Now when you combine it with tobacco.
The effect isn't just additive, it's synergistic.
What does that mean?
It means the combined exposure increases the risk for head and neck cancers far more than if you just added the two individual risks together. They multiply each other's damage.
This is where lifestyle really starts to intersect with biology. We know physical activity is a powerful preventative tool.
Absolutely. For colon, breast, kidney, stomach cancer, the list goes on.
But our modern lives are defined by the exact opposite of that, being sedentary.
And that's so crucial because it's not just about the act of sitting, it's the biological response to the lack of movement.
Like what?
Well, prolonged sitting, which they often measure by tracking TV time, proportionally increases cancer risk, especially for pancreatic cancer. It just contributes to metabolic dysfunction and, really importantly, to chronic inflammation.
And that's the perfect pivot, because chronic inflammation seems to be this core underlying mechanism. What makes it so dangerous?
Chronic inflammation is now seen as the 7th hallmark of cancer development. So think of inflammation as your body's fire alarm. It's meant to be short and sharp. But for many modern conditions, obesity, chronic stress, infections, that alarm just never turns off.
This low-level, constant alarm.
This endless low-level inflammatory cycle just puts constant stress on your cells. It leads to oxidative stress and eventually DNA damage.
Is there a clear example of this?
The classic one is inflammatory bowel disease. People with Crohn's or ulcerative colitis have a drastically increased risk of colon cancer because of that continuous inflammation in the gut wall.
And if we're talking about the gut wall, that brings us right to the microbiome, this invisible organ that's influenced by everything we've just discussed.
It's the conductor of the immune orchestra. I mean, the state of your gut microbiome is absolutely critical. It influences your immune responses. It can even dictate how well you respond to cancer treatments.
So a healthy microbiome means a better outcome.
Patients with a diverse, balanced gut microbiome generally have far better outcomes with immunotherapies.
What's fascinating to me is that researchers are now looking for a specific microbial trigger for early onset cancer. What are they searching for?
A bit of both good and bad actors. They've found that certain beneficial bacteria, like Akkermansia mucinephila, seem to boost our anti-tumor immunity.
Okay.
So the theory is that our modern exposome, the diet, the stress, the chemicals, is systematically wiping out these key protective bacteria, or maybe promoting cancer-friendly bacteria, and that's fundamentally shifting the immune environment in younger people.
So zooming back out a bit, it seems clear that genetics alone can't explain how fast this is all happening.
No, not at this speed.
And yet patients with early onset cancer do have a much higher rate of known genetic risks, like BRCA1 or Lynch syndrome mutations.
They do. Up to 21% of them carry these mutations, compared to just a few percent in the general cancer population.
Which raises the biggest question, right? Why are these genetic risks showing up so much earlier in life now?
And the consensus is pointing toward these intense environmental exposures during early life development, starting in the womb through childhood, and that these exposures are accelerating the penetrance of these existing genetic issues.
Penetrance is a pretty technical term. For the listener, if the gene is like a potential problem, what is the exposome doing to it?
Think of it like this. You're born with a genetic predisposition, maybe a small leak in your armor.
Okay.
That leak might not cause a problem until you're 75 under normal circumstances. But the exposome, the poor diet, the chronic inflammation, the chemicals, it's like it turns the volume dial way up on that gene or just switches it on decades earlier.
The environment is the accelerator pedal for the genes.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And these early life exposures are everywhere. Air pollution, chemicals and plastics, even changes in sleep patterns. Kids today get so much less sleep.
Exactly. Our biology is being programmed for a higher cancer risk decades before we would even think about screening.
So given all of this, what are the actionable steps? Let's start with prevention. The American Cancer Society guidelines are pretty clear on lifestyle.
They're very clear and concise. For diet, they recommend a nutrient-dense, healthy eating pattern. So that means focusing on whole fruits, vegetables, legumes.
And whole grains.
And crucially, they say whole grains should be at least half of your grain intake. And they explicitly say to limit or just exclude red and processed meats, sugary drinks, and highly processed foods.
Tying right back to that UPF data.
Exactly.
And for activity, what's the baseline?
The goal is moderate physical activity. Moderate means you can talk, but you can't sing.
I like that definition.
Yeah, and the key practical advice is to find ways to reduce sitting time. Take the stairs, walk around during calls. Breaking up that sedentary pattern is just as important as the workout itself.
And what about alcohol?
The firm guidance is to limit it. No more than 1 drink a day for women, 2 for men. But the strong caveat is that it's truly best not to drink at all if cancer prevention is your main goal.
Okay, let's move to screening. This is the critical defense, especially for colorectal cancer. The ACS says average risk folks should start at 45.
That is the minimum threshold. If you have a family history or IBD, you need to talk to your doctor about starting much, much earlier.
But the main point is?
The most important thing is just to get screened. Whatever test you choose, just get it done.
Which brings up an important point about the newer non-invasive tests like stool or blood tests. They're easier, so why not just rely on them?
Because a colonoscopy is preventative. It finds and removes the precancerous polyps.
Right.
The non-invasive tests are diagnostic. They look for signs of a cancer that's already there.
So they're finding it later?
Potentially, yes. The sources noted a new blood test found 83% of existing cancers, which is good, but it only detected 13% of the precancerous polyps. A colonoscopy gets 95% of those polyps.
So you miss the chance to prevent the cancer in the first place.
You might. And an abnormal result from one of those tests must always be followed up by a timely colonoscopy. That's non-negotiable.
Finally, we have to look at the systemic picture. These risks and the ability to get screened, they're not distributed equally at all.
This is where we have to shift from individual choices to the societal environment. Lower socioeconomic status correlates with higher smoking rates, sure, but also with living in food deserts.
With less access to healthy food and safe places to be active.
And they have substantially higher exposure to environmental harms like air pollutants. It just compounds the exposome burden right from birth.
And beyond that, there's the chronic stress of being a minority, of facing discrimination. That links right back to the biology we were talking about, doesn't it?
Precisely. Chronic stress is an inflammatory driver. LGBTQ plus individuals, for example, report higher rates of risk factors like smoking and heavy alcohol use.
But they also face minority stress.
Yes, and that stress is linked directly to that low-grade, persistent inflammation that is a hallmark of cancer development. And when they do try to get care, concerns about discrimination can cause delays, which often leads to a diagnosis at a much later, more aggressive stage.
So addressing this crisis means addressing these systemic determinants of health.
It has to.
Okay.
So if we synthesize all of this, the core message is pretty clear. The early onset cancer crisis is an environmental and generational crisis, driven by these cumulative shifts in exposure we're calling the exposome.
And the biggest levers we can pull right now
Are maximizing healthy diet and activity, limiting alcohol, and just ensuring universal early screening uptake, starting at age 45.
What really stands out to me is the need to move past just blaming individuals. Researchers need decades more data, but policymakers need to act now.
Yes.
We're talking about regulating industries that promote tobacco, ultra-processed foods, sugary drinks. We need to increase health literacy and access to healthy environments, especially for kids. We have to mitigate the risk for the next birth cohort.
And that really brings us to our closing thought for you. The science points so strongly to these widespread environmental and lifestyle exposures accelerating our genetic risk. So, what societal interventions beyond just telling people to change their behavior do you think would have the most immediate and profound impact?
Is it regulating early life chemical exposure? Is it implementing sugar taxes? Or is it focusing on large-scale changes to our food system to eliminate food deserts?
It's a question that demands a really comprehensive societal answer and one we all have to confront.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.